So the reason Hamas does what it does two things. One, it understands Western culture better than we understand their culture. That's number one. And so because of that, they can get the West to put pressure on Israel. So that's one of the reasons they do it. The second and most important reason is to guarantee the salvation of their citizens. Part of the reason I haven't spoke a lot about it is because war is cruel and awful and horrific, and there's a lot of stuff to have to sift through on both sides, and it's just awful. But I do want to talk about this a little bit. You posted on Saturday a photo of the Israeli flag saying "Stand with Israel." Why did you feel led to do that, Dr. Tim?
I'll say this: I would do that for any nation who was unjustly attacked like this. If it was Sweden, if it was Mexico or Canada or Colombia or wherever.
Yeah.
Right. Why? Because, well, I'm an American nationalist. I believe, because I'm a Christian, I believe America gets its theological and philosophical foundations exactly right, that all humans have God-given, objective, and unalienable rights that ought not be violated, and in fact ought to be protected by governments. And when we see what Hamas has done, and now we're saying what Iran is doing, this is a violation of human rights. And so therefore, as an American nationalist, I want to see America's interests advanced, and that is that people who are having their rights violated ought to be protected. We ought to fight against those who fight against objective and unalienable God-given rights. And Israel is being unjustly. Are they perfect? Absolutely not. Is America perfect? Absolutely not. Right? But they're being attacked by those who do not believe in objective, unalienable rights. Actually, Islam does not affirm these things.
Yeah.
I just study Sharia law. So they are being attacked by evil, and so the forces of good ought to protect them, pray for them, and stand up for them and protect them. So that's why I said pray for Israel, stand with Israel. And look, I have not made a biblical case for why Israel ought to be protected. One can be made, and many people do it. I'm not doing it. I'm just saying it's objectively wrong what's going on right now and how Israel is being attacked, and good nations will stand up and protect them.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I want to say, so I want to get into a little bit of what's going on worldview wise over there, because I think a lot of times we in the Christian West have this thought that all the other people in the world think a little bit like us. And so if we just placate them a little bit, or if we can just come to the table and talk, we can all reach an agreement, right? Now there is a vast difference between what's going on in Palestine and what's going on in Iran. So for instance, I found some statistics from a recent study. I believe I'll have to find I put the statistics on my Twitter. But here, a recent study says that, hopefully you can see that over 60% of Iranian people in 2022 want a government other than the Islamic Republic. 52% of Gazans, I don't know, and 85% of West Bank Arabs supported the October 7th attacks on Israel and support Hamas. The Iranian people actually want liberation. They actually do. They do not. And there's a video of this Iranian lady. It's about 4 minutes long. So if you go to my X, you can find her video and you can watch it. We're not going to watch the whole thing there, but she outlines it really well about why it's different in Iran, and why the citizens of Iran don't want to protect their government anymore. They're sick of it. But what Iran, the same values that guide the Islamic Republic in Iran are the same values that they inculcate into Hezbollah and into Hamas and into the
Mhm.
Houthis.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that we need to realize in the West is that there is a value system in those areas that's vastly different than our own. And we need to
Yeah.
understand this to understand exactly what's going on. So there's a lot of people that will see a lot of the horrific things that are happening in Gaza and whatever happens in Iran, maybe even in Lebanon, and they'll say, "Look at what Israel's doing to all these people. Aren't they? Aren't they bad? Aren't they evil?" And I'm not going to defend every action that the Israeli military does.
Right.
You know,
Mhm.
they made a huge mistake on a world kitchen. They killed a lot of innocent people
Right.
that way. So they've made some bad calls. But I've seen people say things like, "Well, the Hamas government and the Iranian government, they don't actually care about their people. They just hide behind them as human shields." And so that's an easy thing for us in the West to say. But actually, I'm going to say this: those governments actually care deeply about their people that live there, but they don't care in the same way that you and I think that a government would care for their people, because their care is to guarantee the salvation of their citizens. And how do you do that in Islam? The only guarantee is through an act of jihad. So the reason Hamas does what it does two things. One, it understands Western culture better than we understand their culture. That's number one. And so because of that, they can get the West to put pressure on Israel. So that's one of the reasons they do it. The second and most important reason is to guarantee the salvation of their citizens.
Yeah.
They believe that the people that they hide behind, they don't just do it because it puts pressure on the West. That's an ancillary benefit. Yeah. But when you see somebody like the Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh, I don't know how to say his name, but three of his sons were killed, and he responded by saying this: "I thank Allah for the honor that my children and grandchildren have been martyred." Would you or I think that way with our kids in a war like this, or would we grieve the loss of our children? And now, if my son stood up for his faith and is killed as an innocent person or something like that, I would thank God that his faith wasn't shaken, but I would be in agony because of his death. So
yeah.
Go ahead. What were you gonna say?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, Islam, they continually say that we do not value life. And what they mean by that is they don't value life on earth. They don't care if they sacrifice their citizens as pawns, because that's, according to their beliefs, the only way to have assurance of salvation. Because even those, I've talked to Muslims before who will say, "I do not have assurance of salvation, even if I keep all the rules of Islam. I still don't have assurance of that because Allah is not a God of love and goodness. He can just decide willy-nilly not, to condemn me to hell, even if I keep the law perfectly." But here's the deal: they're going to have the same problem that Calvinists have, because on Islam, that's going to lead to a deity of deception, if not worse. And again, why should you believe a deity of deception if he says, "Hey, the only way I promise you that you're going to get into heaven and to get into my presence is if you die in jihad"? Well, why should you believe him if he's a deceptive deity? So you still don't have it. But that's just, it's a big mess over there.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
Yeah. So to your point, there's a hadith that says that a believer in Islam can have one foot in heaven, and before he gets the other foot in heaven, can be yanked out and thrown into hell. Allah can change his mind just like that. But one of the things I was saying is, so it's not just that they hide behind women and children and combatants. What they're doing, and often what they've convinced their civilians of, the ones that won't leave, the ones that will stay. We go, why are they staying in these combat zones? What they've convinced them of is that you are actually doing a great service to jihad. You are providing us time to respond and to continue to fight for Allah. And so you will be guaranteed salvation when the bomb hits or when you are killed mercilessly. And Israel, operating under Western values, saying, hey, you are enemy non-combatants. We don't want to hurt you. Move out of the way. We're going to drop bombs here. The reason a lot of those citizens don't move is because they have been convinced that if they stay and they die, one, they allow the fight to continue, and two, they're guaranteed entrance into heaven. And so when you've become convinced of those things, you're willing to do almost anything.
Yeah.
And you don't even have to necessarily take my word for it. They'll say it themselves. We love death. You love life. Why would they say they love death? Well, because in death, in a physical death in jihad, it's the only way that they're guaranteed eternal life. And so, interestingly enough, when Hamas puts out statistics, they don't necessarily list civilian kills. They list civilian martyrs in their official statistics, because to them, they are people that have been killed in acts of jihad. The reason that the leader of Hamas celebrates that his children and grandchildren have been martyred is because now he thinks they have been guaranteed access into heaven with Allah. And so that's why it's so hard to speak about what's going on in this war, because it's a completely different type of war than we've really ever seen between two peoples. And so you have to understand what Israel's actually fighting against to understand what's going on there. And I've seen a lot of people talk about it, and a lot of people not necessarily know exactly what the value systems are.